Today on the Fire at Will podcast, we have Lindsey Stemann, LinkedIn expert.
Coming to you from the heart of downtown Greenville, it's the show about thriving in a local economy. You're listening to Fire at Will with your host, Will Stewart.
Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I told you that I was going to say this, Will, but I feel like this is my first TV debut. So I'm going to look into the camera. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Hey, Aunt Sue. I don't actually have an Aunt Sue, but because I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to have you here. This has been fun. We've been talking about this for, I don't know how long, trying to get you on. Back when, I guess I'm still at Endeavor, but when we were full-time at Endeavor, we had a little corner of the world in Endeavor. We were doing our little studio in a corner, and I tried to get you on, but you're so busy and such high demand, and our schedules didn't quite match. So I'm glad life has slowed down for both of us, where we can at least chat a little bit. So.
I am too. I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. So for the three people that don't know who you are, the thing that I'm really excited about just having you on, let me set the preface this first, is you have such a great mind for marketing, for just communicating to businesses what they should be doing, especially with that particular skill of LinkedIn, which is a minefield that I have no understanding of, that I should. I think I use it like everybody else does, and I should probably use it smarter. And you're going to tell me all the ways, and I'm going to look at my bio and be like, man, what am I doing? But I'm really thrilled to have you on for that reason, especially. But for the three people that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this industry and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I always say is I'm here to build you up, right? Not break you down. So we'll only talk about the good things and opportunities for improvement, as they say.
Yeah.
So I kind of threading the full story, right? And how do you condense your life and how you got to where you are in 30 seconds. And so these are kind of the nuggets I decided to pull out. And the first is just growing up, Dad always said, right, the very important life lesson, especially as a young child, and that is that everyone has value, right? Everyone is important. Everyone has something to bring to the table. And so what's interesting is, hindsight's 2020, and I just spoke on a young professionals virtual event, as you can imagine, with everything going on.
Yeah.
So much has gone digital and virtual. And I was remembering a story in college, an experience that I had, and it was the first time that I learned what networking meant. And we were a bunch of young, impressionable students, and we signed up as a business school major for this networking event. And we're there, and let's say it started at 5 p.m. and it was 5:02, 5:03, and nothing started, and we're looking at our watches because none of us had cell phones at that point. And all of a sudden I noticed this person standing in the corner, and I just, maybe part of anxiety and nervousness, just wanted to talk to somebody. So I went over to him and I stuck out my hand and I said, "Hey, I'm Lindsey, what's your name?" And he reached back out and he shook my hand and he put a $20 bill in my hand.
Wow.
And he was actually our speaker to teach us about networking. And what that lesson was that sometimes the most important person in the room is the person who's nervously and awkwardly standing in the corner.
Yeah.
And so it just was really neat to see what my dad taught me as a young child and bring that full circle into what I do today.
Right.
And that is connecting people. If you find my LinkedIn profile or the Meet Me on my website, you'll see that I'm a connector. And in college, I was fortunate to have 2 design internships. So I have a design background and realized, thankfully, at that time that design was not something I wanted to pursue full time, sitting behind a desk all day. You know me well enough to know that I'm very people-oriented. And so naturally, sales was kind of the next phase of my career in terms of after graduation. And so I've been selling, hunting, closing the deal, delivering on the deals in lots of different industries. And in 2000, I guess it's been over 7 years since I've been doing what I'm doing.
Wow.
And parted ways with my previous team and launched off on my own in 2016.
Yeah, that's fun but scary, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I really think God puts different things in our life and certain points for certain reasons, and as long as we're open to receiving them. So at that time, a friend had given me a candle when I was in the process of launching on my own, and on the candle, the inside of the lid, it had a quote that said, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. And so that verse, that quote has stuck with me for so long. I say verse, it was actually a quote by Anais Nin. And it's one that I try to remember on a daily basis, right? Having courage. I was nervous to come here. I mean, you're a friend. We talk often. And
Right.
I was nervous to do this. But I was like, okay, just have some courage and show up. So I feel very fortunate that leading up to launching off on my own for 3.5 years, I was identifying the prospects, closing the opportunities, delivering on the deals, and it was an amazing learning opportunity for that time so that when I did launch off on my own, it wasn't as scary.
Yeah, yeah, and that time of just being courageous and showing up, it really, that's all that needs to be done. And in some ways, you got to be smart about it. But for a business to be successful, showing up and doing the work is 90% of the work.
Yes.
You know. But yeah, that's cool. So you moved to Greenville, right? And then met Danny, or I don't know what the thing was. And Danny's a pretty interesting guy as well. He's a creative guy that has you can tell what he does. 'Cause y'all are a little power couple. I love what y'all do.
Well, thanks. So he's amazing. He and I were actually long distance dating 4.5 years before I came to my senses and moved to Greenville. We were in various cities across the East Coast around that 4.5 year time frame. And he and his business partner actually just celebrated their 10th birthday
Wow.
with Jack Porter. So really amazing business that they've built. And they have a niche in collegiate athletics and just colleges and universities in general. So just to see him and his partner build their business, go from renting an office space to buying a building and renovating that space and being proud of it and growing and working with universities across the country. It's really awesome. I'm really proud of him.
Yeah, that's cool. He's a neat guy. You can tell he's a creative when he walks
sure.
up. You're like, oh, this
Yeah.
guy's on a different plane than me.
Yep.
And that's totally fine. That's cool. So how's the coronavirus been treating you? I know this has been a challenging time for everybody. How has it been for you, kind of going remote and just facing all the challenges that we're all facing together?
Absolutely. I think, again, I just go back to, I'm not necessarily an eternal optimist, but I feel truly fortunate and blessed that I worked from home for 5.5 years before finding my home, my new space in downtown Greenville at Endeavor about 1.5 years ago. And so I feel like I'm literally back at home, right? Back in my old stomping grounds. I think the hardest part for me has been creating boundaries, right? So knowing when to stop work. My husband and I don't have any children at this point, so it's easy for us as business owners and entrepreneurs to not turn it off.
Right.
So we admittedly have fallen into some old bad habits of not shutting off, but I'm in various peer study groups with other business owners, and I just hearing what others are going through who have large teams and who have had to furlough or, make huge shifts in their business. I just feel very fortunate that I'm pretty nimble at this point. We've got a few team members, but and also just my topic, right? LinkedIn for business. So I have already done a lot of virtual training individually, and now we're just pivoting so that we can hit it with the masses.
And one thing we have not clarified yet is what McMillion Consulting does. I don't think we've even said the name of your company.
You have. No.
So let's just get that out.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, and what do you do?
Okay, perfect. So McMillion Consulting is my business. I've had a few people really challenge me. McMillion, what a cool name. How'd you come up with that? Well, it's actually my maiden name. So and some
kind
people
of landed in your lap.
Oh, right. Very fortunate. Yes, McMillion. Not to mention that Stemann is a very difficult last name to pronounce and remember how to spell. So, my niche is LinkedIn as a business tool and equipping professionals, business owners, sales professionals, recruiters, how to leverage this tool to impact their business and ultimately impact others. So, we've got a few very specific services and ways to engage. First and foremost, we have the Profile Transformer. It's a 5-step trademark process that we take individual clients through. We can probably touch more on this later, but I really believe that LinkedIn is a place to tell your story. It's more than just a resume now. Yeah. And so we interview our clients, pull out their story, and write their entire LinkedIn profiles based on that conversation. And the thing I always say, is that at 11 o'clock at night when you're fast asleep, anyone who's doing their homework in preparation to meet you tomorrow, we want to make sure they hear your voice.
Yeah.
So that when they do meet you, they say, oh, that's the Will I read about.
Right.
So we're just going for authenticity in that real story and informing people. So that's the Profile Transformer. And then I'm a speaker. So I do a lot of national and now international speaking engagements, which is pretty fun to share. Annual meetings, conferences, and yes, believe it or not, the topic is always LinkedIn. I mean, if you think about an umbrella, LinkedIn is the umbrella, and underneath that are quite a few different topics. Prospecting and business development and sales, recruiting and talent acquisition, and creating a pipeline for sourcing talent, branding and marketing, reputation management, right? Going back to that profile and that business presence. And then leadership development, pouring back into your team to hopefully retain them, right?
Yeah.
And also ultimately elevate your entire brand corporately as well.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then we train. We do a lot of training, in person and remote too.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. So the coronavirus isn't stopping you, and that's great. That's good to hear. And I think a lot of people are starting to see now the importance of digital marketing and having a digital presence. A lot of these brick and mortar companies, who have depended on foot traffic and whatnot, are now being like, man, we got to do something. And sadly, for a lot of those people, if they're deciding it now, they need to do something. It's probably 2-3 years too late, but they can catch up. It's not the end of the world. What are some things that you're seeing that people are doing right in the digital space when it pertains to LinkedIn? What are some of the things that are important that people should do and that they're doing well?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head that the ship sailed before coronavirus, right?
Goodness, yeah.
But the great thing is that you can still jump aboard, right? A lot of people don't realize this. LinkedIn is actually older than Facebook, and they were also acquired by Microsoft for $26.2 billion almost 4 years ago. So they're not going anywhere. Yeah. And so thinking of LinkedIn as a business tool, which is something that a lot of people don't realize, right? There is, on any online platform, on any, just the internet in general, some garbage, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
but we're human beings, so we tend to find a way to muck it up, right? But as far as LinkedIn goes, it's really thinking about it as your online reputation. So making sure that offline reputation you have in your respective industry amongst your peers and clients is really reflected online through, again, that LinkedIn profile. I say that all the time because it's so critical.
Yeah.
I'm an inherent salesperson by nature, so I get it. I want to build my pipeline and identify more people to do business with. But what I always say is that's page 14. We have to back up to page 1 and 2, or else we'll miss the whole story, and really start with that profile. So folks that are investing in that today to understand the value and importance of that are going to be so much further ahead than those who are afraid to move the needle at all. So the profile is critical. Making sure your company has a presence is critical. And then just again, authenticity, right? Being a human, remembering that LinkedIn isn't a space just to promote your products and services and be a megaphone billboard. It's also a place to educate, to motivate, to inspire. So I always use myself as the example. Yes, LinkedIn is my expertise, but I'm not always posting about LinkedIn. People say, well, why is that? Well, because not everyone cares about LinkedIn as much as I do, right? But who are the people I work with? Well, they're leaders, they're salespeople, they're recruiters, they're managers, they're hiring people. And so I try to find content that also hits those topics so that when they think of LinkedIn and getting better on that tool, I'm one of the first teams or people that they think about.
Adding value is so important. It doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, what the social media content is. If you're at a cocktail party, adding value is so important. And I talk about the same books over and over and over again, but it's the whole principle of jab, 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 right hook, like Gary Vee talks about, which is just give, and then do the ask, the right hook for asking. If you establish yourself as an expert and give people content, then when it's time to ask for something, then people are going to say yes more likely than say no. If you just gone straight up and just been like, ring the doorbell and say, buy this vacuum cleaner.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So what makes LinkedIn different and better or unique from Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever else? I think we know the difference between LinkedIn and TikTok. But, because for me, as I've gotten to discover and explore LinkedIn, that whole mindset's changed some. But, for me, initially, I just saw LinkedIn as a glorified resume site, or Facebook for nerds, like just stuffy white guys, like old business, But how does LinkedIn work and fit in that whole ecosystem?
Absolutely. And I'll even add a third thing to your list of two, which is a job board, right? Oh, well, I'm not looking for a job, so I don't need LinkedIn.
Yeah, right.
But the reality is it's all three of those things and more. So what I always tell people as I'm introducing myself and our team is that what we are not social media experts. We don't touch any other platform except LinkedIn. And really a large part is due to the fact that we see it as a business tool. It is a place to, I'll back up to also say that we can't control how people find us. So wherever we have a digital footprint, it's 99% of the time accessible to anybody who's doing their homework, right? And who has the internet, who can Google you. A lot of people don't realize, that your LinkedIn profile is publicly visible for those search engines to find you. And people don't have to have a LinkedIn account in order to see your profile. So again, it is a reputation management tool. And so I think that's a unique element. Just like Google loves keywords, so does LinkedIn. So every single element, every word is not for any, is critical in terms of that LinkedIn profile to increase your likelihood of being found. And I like to call it an online networking event, professional networking event where you can take those offline relationships and bring them online. It's the 21st century Rolodex, right? 7 years ago, I couldn't say this as strongly as I can today, which is the fact that as our professional world and the digital world that we live in today is and stands, the first place people are going to update anything in their professional world is LinkedIn. It might be a phone number. It might be an email address. It might be a promotion, right? So making sure that we're staying visible so that when there is a life event or something that changes in the people's worlds who we care about, we're notified, right?
Yeah,
LinkedIn is real-time information every single day. So we don't have to manage that in between our two ears in our little brains. Right. So I use it as my backup database for my 21st century Rolodex.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's a great distinguishing characteristic. How does LinkedIn deal with? I'm all over the place. I'm a little ADD today, and that's how does LinkedIn deal with the algorithm of posts and pages and videos versus Facebook and Instagram? Because I've done these experiments. I love just figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and it's funny. I haven't really been able to figure out the time to post, when to post. It doesn't seem like as many people are hitting it as I would see with LinkedIn and Instagram or Facebook and Instagram. How does that all work?
Yeah. So, Will, if you can figure that out, you've got the job. You're hired. Right. So I have lots of contacts who are in my space who have even stronger contacts, inside of LinkedIn corporately. And, none of us know is kind of the short answer, right?
And it seems random.
Yeah, I always don't even go there, right? I sometimes, anytime I see an article that talks about the best time to post on LinkedIn, what I default to is just start posting, right? Just start getting something out there. I think get out of your own way and just start becoming visible and proactive and present. And then you can discern and decipher what works and what doesn't work. Not to mention that what works for a certain population may not work for another population, depending on so many variables, your industry, demographic, geographic, right? Location, there's so many variables. So I always say just err on the side of being present and taking some action than inaction for fear of not having this fully baked strategic algorithmic reasoning for what you're doing. The other thing that always shocks people, since you're asking about the posting piece, is that LinkedIn does say that it takes posting every single day for 60 days in a row, 60, to hit everyone in your network one time.
Interesting.
So it goes back to this
Man.
idea that I mentioned a few moments ago, right? Of we can't control when people are online. So if we're posting something right now, not everyone in our network is on LinkedIn right now.
Right.
So in 3 hours or tomorrow, depending on the size of their networks, they may miss what we posted altogether.
Interesting. Man, that's super interesting. It's the same principles as anything else. Consistency, quality content, giving back to your community, and making your tribe better.
Yeah, totally. I think just simplifying that, Will, in that way gives people permission to take action, right? To move the needle, to show up, to do something. I even say sometimes when I'm in a speaking engagement and I lean in and I say, you know what? It might make sense to get off of LinkedIn altogether. And people sit
You're
back.
not supposed to say that.
Right? And their mouths drop. Exactly. They say, why would she say that? She's the LinkedIn expert.
Right.
But I mean it, right? If you're not going to take it seriously, you might want to consider getting off of it altogether.
Yeah. If you're like me and post, once a month, I have that oh crap moment, like, oh yeah, LinkedIn. Oh man, and that's so easy to do. Consistency, man, is so important. And Seth Godin says, simply ship it. And and he's talking about developing a product, but I think that's also even with articles and posts and stuff. Obviously, you want it optimized, as best as it can be, but just find that content. It doesn't have to be perfect content. Start putting out content. And I think, like you're saying, like it's going to things are going to improve and get better, and then start getting it better and start getting the times and all that sort of thing. So something that happens a lot with LinkedIn is people will just post, or send me direct messages that are just so spammy. I got an offer for someone who wants to buy my agency, which I'm like, this is a scam. It's clear. And they bump me again. They're like, hey, and then I'll have a bunch of stuff. What's appropriate, because there's times where I want to reach out to somebody and be like, hey, love what you're doing. If there's any way we can work together, but I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be the guy that's the spammer. How do we balance that, and what's appropriate?
Yeah, great question. So I'll go on to the receiving side of that response, which is, what do we do when that happens? Is there a way to control that influx of LinkedIn spam, if you will? And there is. So I always refer to the settings and privacy of our own LinkedIn accounts as an oil change. So every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, if you're a good car owner, you're taking your car in to get checked out. LinkedIn is the same way. So on a quarterly basis, hop into your settings and privacy, poke around, see what new settings they've created, because, Will, there actually are certain settings that you can adjust within your privacy of LinkedIn to minimize those types of inquiries in your LinkedIn inbox. So that's the first thing. Yeah. The other thing, in terms of the reverse of that, what if you do find somebody who you want to have a conversation with? I always have to remind people that LinkedIn is just one entry point for conversation. Yeah. Right? So yes, I get on my LinkedIn soapbox all the time, and I talk about it in its kind of singular way. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that it's every communication channel. It is still email. It is still phone. It is still shaking somebody's hand. It is still all of the different entry points where we can have a relationship with somebody. Yeah. So there's a few things to think about, and also meeting people where they're at. So I had a client last week who I will keep anonymous, and he's been in his field for over 25 years, and he is excited to learn how to use this tool. And he said to me, we've been working together for 3 months, and he said, Lindsey, what you've taught me has been so great, and I'm implementing it, and I've got my associate on my team to help me hold me accountable to keep implementing it. Yeah. But I just like the phone. I'm just old school, and I like the phone. And you know what I said to him? And I really didn't even filter it before it came out. I said, adapt or die. And he goes, oh my gosh, I love that. He wrote it down. He put it in front of his camera. Adapt or die. I love that. And I said, we have to meet people where they're at. That's true. And so if you start a conversation on LinkedIn and it doesn't go anywhere, then find a different avenue to reach out to them, right? So it's a level of pleasantly persistent in multiple channels, and leveraging, again, LinkedIn is a fantastic research tool, right? So people like to use the S word, stalking. I stalk on LinkedIn.
Right,
I use the R word called research. I
Yes.
research people. But the number one activity on LinkedIn is looking at profiles. Everybody's doing it. But my follow-up to that, or the other side of the coin, is what are you doing with that intelligence? What are you doing with those observations? Because what you should be doing is incorporating them into your conversation. So if I see that, low-hanging fruit for the two of us, because we're both in Greenville, we have lots of mutual connections, those two nuggets alone of commonality are soft enough for me to open up a conversation with you.
Yeah.
So finding those commonalities and weaving them into your outreaches.
And if it's a genuine connection, people are going to be more open than just being like, well, here's a shot in the dark. I'm going to just reach out. I mean, the shot in the darks, they work, but your chances are much lower of having someone respond if you don't have someone that's, like there's a mutual connection, there's a second degree kind of thing, and you can actually start talking about some kind of commonality versus just swinging for the fence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also putting the shoe on the other foot. What type of message would you want to receive?
Sure.
Right? Think of all the messages you've received in outreach that have just given you the creeps.
Yeah. Oh my
right?
goodness.
Don't do that. Don't
Yeah.
be that guy. So.
Yeah, and dovetailing off of that, there's so much messaging that I get because that's the business that I'm in. It's just branding, messaging, and there's so many messages I get from people where they talk about themselves and their perspective instead of talking about why it matters for me. Those first two sentences in that message, even the first two sentences in a post, whatever you're doing in an ad, don't talk about since 1984 we've been dedicated to quality and excellence.
That's right.
For multiple reasons. One, I don't care how long you've been around. Two, everybody can say they believe in quality and excellence. So there's no differentiator there. But talk about why it matters to me and why I should care and why I should go with you. And because we're so inundated and
Yes.
with so much information that in split seconds we're done, and we decide yes or no whether we want to do this or not.
Very true.
So this is super interesting. I love nerding out about LinkedIn. One question. This is the softball for you. Well, I have two actually. Let me do the first one. We'll go the softball. So the first one is. When is it important for someone to get that LinkedIn Pro? Is it the Pro account or whatever the paid account is? Is that ever necessary? I'm sure it is. When is it important for someone to buy that?
Right. So it's called LinkedIn Premium.
Okay.
Yep. Right. LinkedIn lingo, but I'm here to teach you,
Yes,
right?
help
so,
me.
right. LinkedIn Premium. So oftentimes people will say, "Oh yeah, I've got LinkedIn Premium." To which I respond, "Well, which LinkedIn Premium?" Well, there are 4 as of today, right? The launch of this podcast, because LinkedIn is changing all of the time. There are 4 individual LinkedIn premiums that you can subscribe and pay for, anywhere from $30 a month up to over $120 a month. And there's lots of variables that go into why you would want to pay to play, if you will. But that's the first thing to kind of think about is, okay, if I'm going to be curious about paying, which one should I subscribe to?
Yeah.
The other is, don't be that guy that says, oh yeah, I had premium once and it didn't work.
Right.
And then I challenge you with a question, well, did you use it? Well, no, I didn't use it. Well, no wonder it didn't work.
It's not a magical tool. I just
Right.
pay money.
No, of course not. There's no
man.
red easy button.
I want my money back.
I know. So a few things to keep in mind when you're considering paying to play. One is if you've ever hit the commercial search limit on LinkedIn. So some of our listeners might know exactly what I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
for those who don't, if you use LinkedIn regularly enough, LinkedIn will cap you out essentially on your usage of the tool. And they call it the commercial search limit, which means that you're using it often enough to where LinkedIn says, well, hold on, Will, it might be time for you to upgrade and pay.
Yeah.
So what happens if you hit that? I actually just had a brand new client who is just activating his presence on LinkedIn, and he hit the commercial search limit. He said, what is this? What do I do? I said, well, thankfully, we're at the end of the month because LinkedIn lifts that restriction on the first day of the upcoming month.
Okay.
That said, then we have to ask the question, how are you using it, and which subscription might make sense for you to pay for. Even on the lowest level, Will, that restriction is lifted, so that's a bonus. So even if you're on the career or job seeker, that $30 a month plan, which, by the way, a lot of people feel like, let's say, for example, I'm a recruiter. I've got to pay the most expensive subscription because I'm a recruiter, because that's my title.
Yeah.
But depending on what you're trying to do with the tool, the lowest one may be fine. And I say that because as far as the public eye goes, none of us know which premium subscription you're paying for.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's important to know too. It doesn't say job seeker, career, premium, right? We just see premium. The other thing, one thing that I love, and it goes back to the number one activity on LinkedIn being looking at profiles, and that is we like to know who's checking us out.
Right.
Right. So when I always say,
oh, it's so true.
Right. I mean, we do. We're curious creatures. And so on the free version of LinkedIn, you're only going to be able to see 1 week of history of who's looked at you. And here's the catch. In addition to that, if you've elected to be totally anonymous when you're looking at other people, LinkedIn's not going to show you who's looking at you at all. They say, well, Will, you're not paying and you're totally private when you're looking at people, so we're not going to show you anything. When you pay, even again, on that lowest subscription level, you get 90 days of history of who's been looking at you. And a lot of people say, okay, well, that's interesting. What do I do with that? And that's where we come in and train and teach.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's times, I don't have the paid plan currently, but there's times where I've had it and I can see that data. And I've actually used that time to reach out to people who have been on my profile, and not even mention like, hey, I saw you're on my LinkedIn profile, because that's weird. You may tell me that's the right thing to do. I don't know, but it seemed odd to me at the time. But I've just reached out. It's people I've already known and just been like, hey man, been thinking about you. You know, how are you doing, kind of thing. And that was actually kind of helpful for me. So super interesting. Okay, for the softball, why is it important for someone to hire a LinkedIn expert to help them? You know, there's probably some people who be like, hey, it's a free tool. You know, I'm good with words. I can speak good. So I can do it myself. Why do we need somebody who's an expert like you?
You mean people don't have a LinkedIn budget?
I'm
man, like wait. so surprised.
Yeah, it's not a line item.
They don't have a LinkedIn Lindsey budget.
Utilities, LinkedIn. That's
right. I love it. I like that actually. So it goes back to this idea of that umbrella, right? And LinkedIn, and what I actually was in one of my study groups yesterday, and we were. It was my turn to share with them exactly what I do and how I do it and who I do it for. And it goes back to the basics, which is we're not in the business of convincing people that LinkedIn is a really powerful tool. That ship has sailed, right? Yeah. So I'm not here to twist your arm to tell you it's a powerful tool. If you don't believe that, we're probably not going to work together.
Sure.
But if you have a desire to get better and you feel like you're missing out, or you've heard that your competition or even peers are having success. So when a client that I taught 6 years ago says to me years later, Lindsey, I only implemented, admittedly, I only implemented one thing that you taught me, but I've been really disciplined with that habit. And on average, he's in sales, and on average, it yields 6 new appointments in my calendar every week, of which I have a success rate of 3, 50% success rate of those 6. And he's also doing lots of other things in his prospecting and building his business. Yeah. LinkedIn's just one component of it. So often it's kind of asking the question of, well, gosh, have I looked at my profile recently? Have I looked at my team recently? And when I do my own audit, are we just a hot mess, right? So my very first client 7.5 years ago, really well-known professional, really well-known in his industry and his field, and at the time said to me, Lindsey, I pay a lot. I have a significant budget in Google AdWords and in my analytics. So when you search my industry, my website will be this top search result. And I said, well, we're in a live meeting. I said, do you mind if we try that out? And I could see the beads of sweat coming up on his forehead, right? He's like, oh man, I hope this works.
Oh, man.
So we Googled his industry, and thankfully the first search result was his company website.
Yeah.
But guess what was number 2?
LinkedIn.
His LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And it was a picture of him and his dog backpacking, and he had misspellings, right? I like to call it the fat finger,
Yeah,
right?
right, yeah.
Right? Where we have autocorrect kicks our butts and embarrasses us. But
Never happened with me.
Right. And so there was a huge disconnect, right? Oh my gosh, wow. Like, yes, my website is one place where I'm visibly accessible and present, but I hadn't thought about my LinkedIn profile and my team's LinkedIn profile and how we're using the tool. So part of it is the desire to get better, right? Knowing that there's opportunity and really, again, just depending on who you are and what you're trying to do. So I work with a lot of recruiters and teaching them to build a talent pipeline and be different from all the other recruiters out there. So I said earlier, using different communication channels, email, phone, all the things, but it's also being different and using different language so that you do stand out, right? So it's a very long-winded answer, and I could talk about it for 15 more minutes, but I'll put a period on the end of it.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, when we start our business, we're the cheapest employee that we can get. And there's no fault in that. We're the web designer, web developer, social media expert, sales guy, finances and accounting. Like, we do it all. But as you start making money, it's time to start giving some of that work to people that can actually do it well and do it efficiently and get you a lot further down the road.
That's right.
And then as our company has grown and iterated and we're hiring and, like we're bringing in people, it's I'm thinking more and more every week. It's like, what did I do that I could have paid someone else to do and they could have done it better? Or what did I not do that only I can do that kept our company from growing? Right. And those are two really important questions that I have to ask myself often.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what every entrepreneur, every CEO has to ask themselves. It's once you're getting past that, solopreneur into a team of 5, 10, 15, you're getting into the millions. Like, what do you do to maximize?
Right. Well, and I think it's also deciding, and no answer is wrong or approach is necessarily wrong, but it's deciding, what are you trying to accomplish? Yeah. If you're buying a car, do you need a used car that can get you from point A to point B, but it's unpredictable of how long that car will be running? Right. Do you need a kind of basics Honda or something simple, right? That has a kind of that second tier, second level. Or do you want the Rolls Royce, right? That's really going to, so there's different levels, just like in any business, product, service. And so if you're looking for, something that's more basic and rudimentary, then there are lots of advertising and marketing agencies out there that have an idea of how to help with LinkedIn. Right. But it goes back to this idea that I'm not a social media expert for a reason. I'm not a generalist for a reason. It's hard enough to keep up with LinkedIn as it is. So I can't imagine trying to be an expert in all of the others. So if you are trying to look for something that is more strategic and more intentional and can take you further, then it might make sense to engage, a team like ours.
Yeah, for sure. The coronavirus has changed a lot of how we're communicating with the world outside, and it's been very exciting for me because I preach the gospel of video every day, and I also have been preaching the gospel of going live, and just putting content out there. I mean, people are more likely to watch a video than read. And increasing engagement. So I'm glad, that people are finally, getting on this bandwagon. More of that video content is going out. I love what you've been doing. You've been doing the 3-tip bit that you've been putting on Instagram. Is it been on anywhere? It's on YouTube too as well, right?
Yes. So we host it on Instagram. I host it on YouTube, post it on our business Instagram account, which still makes me blush. I just ripped the Band-Aid and created that account a few months ago.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, but what's really fun, Will, first of all, I've just been showing up and having fun. When we talked, you mentioned earlier the different platforms. To me, Instagram is a place, and I might be totally wrong. So for any Instagram experts out there, please bring me back down to reality if I'm totally on a different planet. But it's a place where I can be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more vulnerable, and I can can share more of the personal side, where in LinkedIn, it is a business professional platform. And so I like being a bit more buttoned up on that platform.
Yeah.
That said, the 3-Tip Bit is also a great place where we've been posting those videos as well on our company page, McMillion Consulting, as well as my personal page. So,
People talk about, business to business and business to consumer, but honestly, we're in the business of doing H to H, which is human to human.
Yes.
And that's what video does. It gives you that interaction. You get to see someone's facial expressions, and you get to see how they are. And when we rewind the tape and look back at ourselves, we see like, my goodness, I'm, like, why does my hair look that way, or why do I sound that way, or why is my whole presence that way? What's wrong with me? But people don't see that. They just see the human, and they love it. And they don't think anything more of it. But yeah, you've been with a 3-Tip Bit. You've been bringing in experts, and it's short video. I mean, it's like 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah, 5 to 10 at most. But it's been really fun. I'm a very strategic, thoughtful, detail oriented, process driven person.
Right.
So. Truly, when God laid that idea on my heart in March, I just said, all right, I don't know what this means, but let's roll and see what happens. And so there's no fancy editing. There's literally no editing at all, actually. So I've interviewed folks where, they're at home with three kids, and their youngest hops on their lap. And as soon as we stop the record, oh my gosh, Lindsey, I'm so sorry. I said, no. This is perfect.
Yeah.
This is humanity, right?
Yes.
This is what people are looking for. And so it's pushed me out of my comfort zone, but pretty quickly realized just how fun it's been. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. And so yeah, the video medium is I'm new to it, but I've had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being real. And, and there's also, you have to understand like how much production you want to put in that video and how much it deserves.
Right.
Because if you took that video and you just poured the production into it, bought the fanciest cameras and everything's just perfect, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily make that any better.
No.
The content's still the content.
That's right.
And having it raw even adds charm to it. And you're on your porch sometimes or somewhere in your office, it's well lit, it looks good, and it's just like, man, I like it. So
yeah.
I wish more people did that, and it probably puts me out of business a little bit just to say that, hey, do it in your living room, but do something. And it kind of goes back to your point of just create content, put things out there. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Right. Well, that's a huge compliment coming from you and the expert of videography. I was always, in getting to know you over the last few years, I remember launching the 3-Tip Bit thinking, oh man, is Will going to pull me aside and kind of have the real talk conversation?
Have the intervention.
Yeah, have the intervention, Lindsey. This is bad stuff. You need to stop.
Yeah.
So thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been super interesting. I love chatting with you. We could go for hours, but I know your time's valuable, and I really appreciate you coming in. Let's ask some closing questions that I ask everybody. So how do you balance work and life? That's hard with the coronavirus, especially.
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. Dan Waldschmidt, local to Greenville, years ago, I heard him say that it's not about balance, right? The definition of balance is equal distribution in weight, right? We think of a scale and we want it to be balanced. And when is life ever really balanced? I don't know about you, but I certainly
Never.
haven't figured out that math. But what we do have is harmony. And harmony is the culmination of multiple notes simultaneously playing at one time that create a pleasing sound continuously. And that's life, right? So to me, and I don't always get it right, and I struggle through it often, but when I think about my life in harmony from work and personal, gosh, there's just there's a lot of weight lifted that comes from as opposed to trying to achieve balance.
Yeah, and I've been stuck in that before, of just trying to do that balance, but that harmony, that's a great way of putting it. I love that. That's fantastic. How do you define success?
Peace.
Yeah.
Peace. Yeah. And that's new for me. So being a hardwired salesperson, I've gone through, I feel very fortunate that young and early in my career, I had some burnouts, if you will, and was thankful to experience those at an early age in my career, where I realized that there's more to life than hitting my numbers and trying to crush these goals, and those don't define me. It's if a lot of folks have done Sandler training. It's the role versus the identity. My roles change every day, but my identity and who I am at the core doesn't. And so to me, success is breathing and having peace and confidence that everything is going to go as according to someone else's plan, not mine. And and I would say probably the best thing that I've done in my business is bringing on a business partner. That when you work with somebody who's wiser than you and more experienced than you and has a bigger plan, so if you know where I'm going, right, bringing in God as my business partner. And I fail at this often, multiple times throughout the day, but gosh, there's just a huge weight lifted knowing that I'm not the one in control of every outcome. In fact, I listened to Chris Patton's podcast. So for any listeners and watchers who haven't listened to that interview yet with Will, Chris Patton's conversation with you was just so powerful.
Oh my gosh, love that guy.
Yeah. So on my to-do list now is reading Proverbs. And interestingly enough, go figure, as God has it, the verse of the day was Proverbs 16:3. And it was just, I can't quote it because I'm terrible, but so I won't put that pressure on myself. Yeah. But it's this idea that you give up your plans to Him, and He'll make them successful by His definition.
Yeah, which is such a burden lifted off when you can just say it doesn't belong. The results don't belong to me. They belong to God. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm not going to shirk that responsibility.
That's right. We're called to work.
Yeah, but but just say, hey, God, it's in your hands. And that's something that some people don't get, but when you get to that place, it's freeing. It really is. Yeah, that's good. There's a great book that I read when I was a kid about a guy that I'm trying. It's like God Owns My Business or something. I think I forget it, but it's I don't know if you've read it, but it was this guy that basically developed this way to extract chemicals from the filmmaking process. If you had a camera, they use certain metals and stuff to develop the film. Well, he took and extracted the metals and would sell it and all sorts of things. But he essentially got his company to where God owned 90% of it, where 90% of their company was given back to charity. Wow. It was amazing. I read that as a kid, and I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that was even possible, that you can do it. But he found a way, and there's many others who have as well. So
absolutely. And I think it goes back to, I wouldn't have even known that was an option either, right? Yeah. Like, wait, I don't have to do this business on my own. I mean, I had a relationship with God before that and personally, but I hadn't really thought about bringing it into work and into my professional world. And so, He's everywhere, right?
Yeah,
so thankfully for that. And I would say that a large part of that has been due to community, right? I mean, we're called to do life in community, not in silos. So coronavirus has significantly impacted what most of us would define as community in person, but I'll share with you that have you ever heard of Marco Polo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you a user?
I am.
Oh man, it's so fun. So I just got on Marco Polo. For those of you who've never used it, it's a really fun app. And I kid you not, Will, that I have made two friendships into sisters through Marco Polo, and the three of us just getting to know each other better and laughing and sending videos together to each other. And then I've been going through a program since last July with a women's group. And again, we were meeting every week in person, and we've transitioned that to video meetings. And there's an element of humanity that's still missing, right? That you don't get when you're virtual. But gosh, like, to not stop that communication with other people altogether. We're just so fortunate that we've got technology to stay connected to each other.
Yeah. And like anything, you have to be intentional.
Oh, for sure.
And just adapt and be intentional. And you can make it through. Marco Polo is fantastic. I've used it only for personal reasons, just like my mom's on Android. So like that's a great way for us to send videos of our little girls and, But there's a guy that I follow. His name's Dane Sanders, and he has a course about working from home. He's this whole thing, and Forbes picked it up, and he has it went from just one guy just doing a few courses to now it's massive. But he has a Marco Polo group where people. in the group can share videos. It's super interesting. I hadn't seen that as a business tool.
Yeah.
But I thought it was smart.
That's really cool. I'll definitely look into that. I have actually, one thing that the app does, unless this is a setting that I didn't realize was an option, but on my Marco Polo, they'll suggest people who recently joined the app, and a lot of them have been clients of mine from years ago. And so when all of this, the pandemic hit and really became a real thing, I got on Marco Polo and sent them video messages. And, we're not necessarily in an ongoing dialogue, but it goes back to what we discussed earlier, right? It's meeting people where they're at and just telling them you care. And it didn't have to be a LinkedIn message, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, who knows? In another life, you might become the Marco Polo expert.
I don't know. Somebody asked me recently, are you going to start teaching Instagram? Absolutely not. No way.
Yeah, and the target moves so much with all those. I mean, with Facebook, it's been ridiculous trying to even stay on top of that with Facebook Live, as we've had the studio and that sort of thing. So what are you thinking about currently? What's something that just kind of fascinating you? It doesn't have to be about LinkedIn or even business. It could be just about anything in the world. Why do wall outlets look like faces? I don't know. Like, it could literally be anything.
So this is literally the first thing that just popped into my mind.
Yeah.
And it's, so since working from home over the last few weeks again, as I mentioned earlier, Danny and I don't have any human children yet, but we do have a fur child.
Yeah, right.
His name is Tater Todd. And
Todd,
Todd. Yes,
nice.
Yes, of course. And I am so fascinated by him. I mean, any dog lovers, pet lovers, animal lovers who he's our creature.
Yeah.
Like, a creature lives in our house.
Right, yeah.
That's kind of bizarre. But he has such a personality, and he's almost 7 years old. And my husband and I always talk about, we still can't figure out what his voice is because he has so many personalities. So Instagram, again, has been a place for Tater's little personality to come to life, which has been really fun. So yeah, I'm like totally fascinated with our little dog.
Yeah, they're so interesting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have a dog again. I love dogs. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
So what resource, like a blog or a podcast or a book, would you recommend?
Yeah. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale.
Yeah.
I think it was published in like the 60s or something.
Yeah.
I should have looked before I suggested it, but it's an older book. And wow, talk about just nuggets that you can hop into that book, pull out a paragraph or two, apply it to your day, apply it to your week, apply it to a challenge, apply it to your personal life and professionally as well. That is a book that lives on regardless of the times that we're in. So that's a big one that I would recommend.
Isn't it amazing how those books are still relevant today?
Yes.
So much has changed if you think about when that book was penned, to now. But human nature doesn't change.
That's right.
And there's certain things that just will always be the same. Yeah, that's a great one. So where can people find you? Where are they online? not in person.
Right. So we have to start with the obvious, right?
Right.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So Lindsey McMillion Stemann, and then we also have our company page, McMillion Consulting. Have been putting great content out on that page. I am not very active on Facebook, admittedly.
Yeah.
Right? Shame.
That's fine.
But
it's okay.
it's you stay in your lane, right?
Yeah.
And again, I just added, as I said a few times, LinkedIn Lindsey is my Instagram business handle. So
awesome.
Those are the two primary places. And then we've got our website, of course, McMillionConsulting.com.
And so people want to see the 3-tip bit. Is that mainly on Instagram? Where can people find that?
Yeah, anywhere you want to be, we've met you there,
Okay.
right? So
Man,
if you want to go to
love it.
YouTube, if you want to go to LinkedIn, if you want to go to Instagram, we've got probably at least 18, 19 recordings either have already released or in the queue. So lots of good stuff there.
Look at you, overachiever. I love it. That's good. Well, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity, and sharing all this. I wish you just continued success. I have no doubt that you will, but I really appreciate it. This has been a fun chat.
It's been great. I appreciate it too. Thanks
Awesome.
so much, Will.
Yeah, and for anybody that's been watching and listening, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on Facebook, we also have a podcast. So we're wherever fine podcasts are sold, you can find us there. If you're listening after the fact on your podcast, we actually have a live show on Facebook. So just search for Fire at Will Podcast on Facebook, and you'll find us there. We're on Instagram. Fire at Will Podcast is not on LinkedIn, but I'm on LinkedIn if you want to find me. And I probably should update my profile picture, but don't tell Lindsey. But this has been fun. We're going to put all the notes in the show notes so that where you can find links to everything and can find Lindsey. And one last note. If you notice, we're recording here at Pronk Studios, which is a business that I own, which is a studio that's live streams, can do pre-recorded content. We can do a lot of things. We can do all kind of setups. And if you're trying to get the word out during the coronavirus and want to just start doing some webinars, maybe some live stream podcasting, there's a lot of things we can do here. There's a lot of stuff we've done. We've rolled in a grand piano one time, which was just fantastic. That was fun. But we've helped a lot of people get the word out, and we'd love to help you as well. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.